As of the moment this video is uploaded, Marathon 2026 will have officially released to the public as a finalized product, the first new entry into the AAA space from the developers over at Bungie since the release of Destiny 2 over 8 years ago. Not only that, but this revival of the Marathon IP marks the first entry into the Marathon game series since 1996, 30 years ago. So what's so special about Marathon 2026? And how did it go from being one of the most hated upcoming games to becoming the new extraction shooter standard in just a few months? Well, grab a snack, hit that like and subscribe button, and stick around to find out. But before I can give you the answer to those questions, let's go back to the beginning. Back to 1994, to the fifth entry into the video game space by the developers at Bungie. Let's go back to Marathon. Anemoia. Nostalgia for a time or a place one has never known. Now, I'd like to preface this portion of the video with a few disclaimers. Number one, I am not a lore historian, and I'm younger than the Marathon IP as a whole, and while I do love the lore that I'm learning about this fragmented world, I'm new to it. It quite literally has been around longer than I have. So please, if I make any mistakes here, give me some leeway, and feel free to comment with corrections. With that said, let's talk about Marathon, the 1994 version. A demo version of Marathon was released on November 23rd, 1994, and received public acclaim in FPS spheres at the time. On December 21st of that same year, Bungie released the game in full, and it was a commercial success. Hundreds of thousands of copies were sold, and the game was praised widely for both its narrative and its accessibility on the previously unpioneered Macintosh PC. Marathon was Bungie's answer to Doom. In the years following, Bungie would release two more games in the series, Marathon 2, Durandal, and Marathon Infinity. While these games all played in a very similar fashion, the most important thread they shared was intricacy. Intricate narrative world building in an FPS of this scale had never really been done before, not well anyways. Marathon wasn't a game to play when you simply wanted to rip and tear. It was a living, breathing world of cybernetics and wires that frayed into powerful storytelling meant to draw you in. When you fought the aliens on board the UESC branded Marathon ship, there was a feeling of power and pride that came with it, and an excitement at uncovering the truth behind it all. Now, while I wasn't present to directly experience these feelings about Marathon 1994, like I said, I'm younger than the IP, I know how intricacy can shape a narrative into something more than a story, how a developer's passion can mold a world to be lived within. In fact, I felt this exact way fighting the Fallen in the Cosmodrome, back when I booted up Bungie's critically acclaimed Destiny for the first time. I felt it elsewhere too, roaming the streets of Night City, uncovering the past of Johnny Silverhand in Cyberpunk 2077. And I recall feeling this joy and exploration when I finally decided to commit to a long-term Minecraft world. I remember the mystery that shrouded these worlds that were so lovingly cared for, and I remember the ecstasy I felt when I finally peeled back that veil and glimpsed past the surface of understanding. It was wonderful. So, does Marathon 2026 hold up to that same standard? The answer is subjective, and yet, for me, it is an astounding yes. Throughout its development cycle, it was unclear whether Bungie knew the actual direction it wanted to take this game. Would they lean into the past, or would they try to brave the frontier that is the AAA gaming market? Regardless of their planning, one thing remained clear. This game's narrative world building had to be handled with care once more. There was no other option. What once was praised for its innovation and storytelling had to persist. I'd argue that Bungie needs it to. But now that Bungie has decided its direction, and the IP moves ever forward, a new question is posed in the context of Marathon's history. How did we get to where we are? I mean, the Marathon series has always been, at its core, a narrative FPS, but with the advent of the current gaming climate, Marathon 2026 is an extraction shooter. This isn't just odd. In the FPS space, this genre is almost the complete opposite of the single-player narrative campaigns of Marathon's past. Extraction shooters are competitive. Avid players of the genre will even go so far as to change fundamental graphics settings on their PCs to remove all excess clutter for the sake of more competitive gameplay. That's not the type of person who played Marathon 1994. And yet, Bungie has found a way to continue to tell the stories of Marathon, despite its new genre. The way they do this? Striking visuals. It's something Bungie has always been good at. It's even been remarked that Bungie has the best skyboxes in the gaming industry, notably referencing the likes of Destiny. But striking visuals don't sell a story on their own. So how does Bungie perform world building through their visuals? It's a simple process. Develop a stunning visual with stark neon brights, then ruin the visual, make it grimy, cover it in muck. Show how wear and tear have taken over a colony. Then in contrast, add more neon and make it untouched. Not only does Marathon 2026 do this, its genre being a competitive extraction shooter actually exemplifies these visuals by forcing you to play extremely slowly, giving you ample time to process your environment. For Marathon, these brilliant visuals send a clear message. There was a world here, and it lived and died. And now a new world is living, feasting off the remnants of the old one. Tau Ceti may have died, and yet it lives. This idea is not new. In fact, it's one of the core tenets of the Marathon IP, I would argue. For further context, let me give a brief lore explanation for those of you who are not familiar with the lore. And even if you do happen to know it, I'd recommend sticking through the explanation just for the extra bit of context in what I mean. If you're super hyper-versed in the lore though and want to skip past it, I'll put a time card on the screen for you to skip to in the video. So, let's start at the beginning. And when I say the beginning, I mean the Mesozoic era, like with dinosaurs. Here's the basic rundown. There's a bunch of aliens. Two species of these aliens, the Yarrow and the Werkakantur, don't really like each other. You don't really need to know their names. Their beef causes the meteor that supposedly ends the Mesozoic era and wipes out the dinosaurs. Eons later, another alien race named the Four have become major players. Remember this name for later because they are important. They're plunderers, slavers, and conquerors. They pillage the galaxy for the long-lost tech of the Yarrow race, and they use it to destroy all life they can't subjugate. For a majority of Marathon's lore, they're in deep space, enslaving another species of aliens named the Sphit on a planet named Lahawan. Now back on Earth, we're in the modern era. Explorers have found the landing site of the meteor that ended the Mesozoic era and have salvaged Yarrow tech from the site to further technologically advance as a species. Several corporations come into play on Earth and beyond as humans move on to Mars. Notably, Traxxas and Sekaguchi Electronics, later rebranded to Sekaguchi Genetics, are both of importance, as humanity continues to progress forward on stolen tech. The passing of years sees the dawn of the following technological advancements: true artificial intelligence, cybernetic implants and prostheses, and an ever-increasing military presence from the Unified Earth Space Council, also known as the UESC. With the increase of authoritarian presence and the added disasters that result from AI running rampant, Earth is shaken, and Mars is in shambles. Revolts start as famine spreads, and from the ashes of this revolution, two things of importance result. Firstly, MITA, an activist group who utilizes violence as a means of standing up for Martian life, sees extreme growth as it attempts a coup against the UESC. While this technically fails, it does prevent the UESC from becoming too overpresent and wins some important things back for the general Martian population. Secondly, the UESC gains control of Deimos, one of Mars's moons. They immediately begin their plan of converting the moon into an intersolar craft, known simply as the UESC Marathon. There would be peace for a time, and after 300 years, the UESC Marathon, crafted on the basis of former Martian lives, would reach its destination on Tau Ceti 4, within the Tau Ceti system, setting up a colony to live just as humanity had done on Mars. Unfortunately for those in the Tau Ceti colony, Durandal, one of the 3 core AI on the UASC Marathon, would go rampant, and would seek to escape the bounds of human creation. It is from Durandal that the quote so often used in Marathon's marketing would be pulled from. The quote is, "Escape will make me God." In Durandal's need to escape, it uses the UESC Marathon's communication array to send a distress signal into deep space. Before humanity can deal with it though, the 4, conquerors and destroyers of galaxies, would receive the signal. The 4 arrive and attack, and communication with the Tau Ceti colony is entirely lost. There is no rest, though, in the following years after the UESC announces that they have lost communication with the Tau Ceti colony. Instead, the factions of humanity are looking to the future. The UESC is planning another trip to Tau Ceti to discern what happened. Traxxas has the wealth to rival the UESC. Sekaguchi Genetics has the physical armaments, and Maida has sheer willpower and ideals. The next 100 years would be a cold war between these factions, as they race to be the first to discover the fate of the UESC Marathon. The UESC arrives on Tau Ceti first, but as each faction has arrived after them, mercenaries in biomata shells made possible by Sekaguchi's developments would become the runners that scavenge what's left of the UESC Marathon colony. And this is where Marathon 2026 jumps into the fray. If you want a bit of a deeper glance into the lore, I've linked a wonderful video in the description by Jake the Alright that manages to explain it better than I ever could. And it does so with stunning graphics and a great soundtrack all in about 15 minutes, so definitely give that a watch if you're interested in learning more. Now, let's look at this lore I've just crammed into your head with a bit of a graphical storytelling lens over it. When playing Marathon 2026's open beta, one aspect of the lore was made clearer than ever, and not by way of spoken backstory or written text. Bungie's use of environmental storytelling screams disaster. It says in bold strokes of neon and dirtied waters that the colony on Tau Ceti 4 wasn't just lost, it was crushed. This air of grief and haunted mystery has a hold of every single corridor you walk. Notes are left unfinished on whiteboards, grime is splattered across otherwise untouched structure. And you, at the center of it all, have a role to play. You're here for a reason. And that reason is not necessarily to uncover what happened. That reason is to scavenge as much as you can and make it out with your life. Because this colony is dead and yet still breathing, just in a far different manner. Where once humans would have walked, there are overgrown forests. Where companies would have loaded shipping crates of goods to be sold to the masses, you find the crates open and scattered. And where there were once large crowds of people, the red glow of UESC cyber soldiers creep like dread made manifest. This is the basis of Marathon. This is the core tenet that intrigues, the ideal upon which Marathon and all of its visual storytelling is based. Things live, and they die. How you act on that information is what matters, because though the colony on Tau Ceti 4 is lost, their shrouded legacy is still yet to be unveiled amidst the stars. But if you followed Marathon's development cycle at all, even at the fringes, you know that it wasn't always such a masterclass in visual narrative. In fact, the visuals of Marathon 2026 were quite the center of attention. So let's talk about it. Controversy. Disagreement, typically when prolonged, public, and heated. The date is July 15th, 2022. Bungie is acquired by a new parent company, a little-known corporation known as Sony. This exchange is something that would benefit both companies. Bungie would receive further funding and support as an independent subsidiary of Sony. Conversely, Sony would receive veteran developers meant to specialize in one thing and one thing only: expertise in live service gaming. This is important to remember. Let's skip forward about a year, to May 24th, 2023. PlayStation, also owned by Sony, is hosting a showcase of up-and-coming games. Final Fantasy gets a reveal, Spider-Man 2 gets shown off, and out of the midst of everything else revealed, Bungie's Marathon makes a surprise appearance, something no one had expected. The art is stunning, bright, and captures everything that Bungie is known so well for. It even goes beyond that, reaching into visual frontiers they haven't yet touched in an aesthetic that's really on the fringe of the gaming industry. This is new, it's fresh, and it sets an expectation. But it isn't the focus, as another game of higher importance to PlayStation is revealed on this same day, Concord. 1 year and 3 months later, Concord would be released. At launch, it would hit its all-time peak. Concord would hit just under 700 concurrent players on Steam, an astonishingly low number given its high profile. Just 2 weeks later, Sony would refund this live service game to all who purchased it and shut it down for good. This failure on Sony's part was so catastrophically large that it became commonplace for people in the negative gaming spheres to refer to upcoming games as Concord 2.0 to show their disdain. This game, Concord, was meant to be Sony's big hero shooter hit, their live service magnum opus, and yet it flopped. The reasons for this are too much for just this one fragment of a video. And that's not the point of this video, so we're gonna move on. But just know, Sony almost assuredly consulted Bungie for experience regarding how to approach the live service aspect of Concord. This failure was not Bungie's fault, and yet it almost assuredly left a slight stain on their record going forward. Let's move further forward. 8 months after the failure of Concord, on April 23rd of 2025, Bungie's Marathon entered a closed alpha. A select number of people were able to play, and their reactions were underwhelmed. There were hundreds and thousands of complaints. Avid Destiny 2 players felt that they were losing their developers to a new game, while players of the closed alpha felt that the game was just not visually appealing. The graphical standard for a game of this caliber was set astronomically high, and Marathon's closed alpha was not even close to achieving it. Not to mention, complaints about the gameplay loop, time to kill, and general identity of the game were circulating like wildfire as the closed alpha came to a close. Marathon was set for a release on September 23rd of 2025, and amidst all of these complaints, one question was beginning to stray at the edges of people's minds. Was Bungie going to be able to deliver this game by its initial deadline? The answer would come on May 15th. 9 days after the closed alpha finished. A digital artist and graphic designer by the name of Fern Hook would take to Twitter under the username AntiReal to voice a concern. She had noticed during the closed alpha that a number of design elements used in the official game branding and level design for Marathon were taken from her original designs without her consent. This quickly gained traction on the platform, and amidst all other concerns surrounding Marathon's shaky reception, this became a nail in a coffin. Now, it's important to note just how severe this was. AntiReal's designs hadn't been posted in a recent time frame. These designs were originally uploaded in 2017, years before Marathon even began its development process. Not only that, but the designs that Marathon had stolen were not just used sparingly. Bungie had plastered them on every inch of their environments. You couldn't go a single game without seeing at least one of these designs in the periphery. This was a blatant robbery. The reception of this news had the community in uproar. This infringement was, and remains still, not okay. The Marathon team reached out to AntiReal to see if something could be done to rectify this, as they made public statements that confirmed what everyone had already known and yet still had feared. The next day, a live stream would be held by Marathon's dev team to discuss the game. While no mention of the controversy would be seen on the stream, every chat member that partook in the stream spoke the words in unison: "Plagiarism will make me God." This twist on the iconic "escape will make me God" line from the former marketing would be a match to an already blazing inferno. Marathon's dev team experienced a drop in team morale that was described as a freefall. There was no doubt in the community's mind at this point that this game would not deliver by its planned release date. There was simply no way. On June 17th, Marathon would be delayed indefinitely. Unfortunately for Bungie, this was possibly one of the worst things that could have happened at this time. Following these events, on July 15th of 2025, Destiny 2 Bungie's main moneymaker would release one of its 2 expansions for the year, The Edge of Fate. Coming off of the heels of Destiny 2's best-selling expansion, The Final Shape, this new expansion just didn't measure up. In fact, it was received so poorly that Destiny 2's player count reached a state it hadn't seen since an earlier expansion known as Curse of Osiris, when Bungie nearly had to declare bankruptcy. Not only was Marathon's team morale low at this point, now so was Destiny 2's. Everything that could have been going wrong was. How Bungie would come back from this was a mystery, one shrouded in uncountable layers of press disaster. In August of 2025, Sony's CFO indicated a possible timeframe of March 2026 for Marathon's release. But as September 23rd creeped ever closer, Marathon's dev team, much like the actual UESC Marathon, was showing radio silence. In early December 2025, Marathon's dev team and the artist they'd stolen from, Anti-Real, came to a satisfactory settlement that likely involved compensatory action. Then, Marathon went back to silence. It was only on February 12th of 2026, after months of head-down development, that Marathon's dev team would announce an open beta prior to its launch in the form of a server slam event. The following weeks would give us a glimpse at the world, the updated visuals and characters, and even the music, as perception finally began to shift. Perseverance. Persistence in doing something despite difficulty or delay in achieving success. As of February 26, 2026, Marathon officially opened its doors for an open beta, and in stark contrast to a certain former Sony live service game that came before it, Marathon's Server Slam would launch to an astounding 143,000 concurrent players on Steam, not to mention its console counterparts. Over the course of the Server Slam, Marathon would average out its concurrent players at about 70,000 on Steam alone. Whether this player base that tried the free open beta will transfer once the game is released is still yet to be seen. But given that Marathon has been near the top of the Steam charts for the better part of the week, I think it's safe to say that Marathon has solidified itself in the gaming scene. The core developers of Marathon have learned to treat this game with care and love, even amidst their failures. And when one individual thought it okay to infringe on the work of another, Marathon took the fall and addressed it, and it made right on the situation, and it stood back up. So what changed in the radio silence between controversy and gameplay? The same ideal that inspires Marathon at its core. Things live, and they die. Marathon would have its heyday in the early development cycles and reveals, then shatter at the impactful failures of its own making. As of 6 months ago, almost anyone you asked would have called Marathon a game that would be dead on arrival. But innately, Marathon is not something that remains dead. Just like the Biomata shells it places in our hands, Marathon's basis is inherent to reincarnation. The dev team's morale had to be laid low, to push all but absolute necessity to the wayside. Their pride, their time, their daily lives, all of it was put to rest in the name of passionate, dedicated work. The Marathon team has put their all into this craft of theirs. And that means something, because Marathon is about legacy. What once sparked so much interest in gamers across the globe all those years ago has now come back. What was left behind on Tau Ceti 4 is ours to seize. And it isn't just a legacy that it brings to the table. Marathon 2026 brings that same narrative intrigue from 30 years ago to the forefront, and it innovates on it. A reincarnation of the IP. This release is a breath of new life, and a chance to move beyond past failures. But even more so than that, it is a testament to Bungie's dedication and perseverance even amidst the face of adversity. So to answer the questions I remarked on earlier, what makes Marathon special is actually quite simple and surprisingly profound. It is its willingness to persevere, despite all odds, just as humanity does time and time again within the lore of this beloved franchise. And beyond that, the mirror that Marathon lifts to our lives is one that inspires hope. what once had failed, what once was hated, can become loved once more, and to that effect, endurance is key. To be extremely performative, and quote the late Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, if it is endurable, then endure it. So, even when you've lost everything, hope to persevere, to endure. You can always run again. Over the course of the Marathon Server Slam, I personally spent less hours than I would have liked playing the game. And as someone who's quite literally never played an extraction shooter before, those hours on my first night playing were spent in frustration. I died countless times, and every time it felt like I was being set back to rock bottom. And that's because I was. Yet I ran again, and again, and I set my feet on the ground and dug my heels into the gravel. And slowly, I found my footing. And slowly, I realized that despite my troubles in starting, the way to play Marathon isn't a sprint. It's, well, a marathon. As I'm writing this script between the server slam and the launch window, I cannot wait for Marathon to release officially. The world and the gameplay has drawn me in a way that only a Bungie game of this caliber could ever do. When Marathon launches on the 5th of March, when this video is uploaded, I'll be there. I hope you will be too. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you Starside Runners.